Hello. Hello, Bianca.
Hi, Alex. Hello from Bianca, who's had a meal.
Yeah, we Bianca and I have been on a couple meetings already this morning because we work together and it's amazing. And it was a different Bianca before and after food. I feel like it's one of those Snickers commercials right now. It's like you're not new you when you're hungry. Um,
No, it was so bad. Like I didn't realize it until just now. I found myself just like coming back to myself. I was like, wow, I was a little cranky earlier today. I lost all sense, you know?
it wasn't it wasn't bad. It was actually like
Okay.
helpful. You kind of like kept us on track. You're like, we need to do this, we need to do this, we need to do this. This is how I'm feeling. Not that far off. Like it was a helpful place to be, but like there's definitely a little bit more of an edge to it that you ate and now you're laughing. I didn't hear you laugh this morning.
Not at all. Not at all. There were no laughs. There were, y'all are talking too much. I mean, I didn't say that out loud. I said it in my heart. Um, I said in my heart, I was like, why are we discussing a button? Let's move on, people.
Yeah, buttons are important though.
Um, sorry. This is the most I've laughed all day. So yeah. So now we know that I literally just need nourishment. So like
You
I
need
think
nourishment. So what are you eating?
I think I got some like pad thai stuff. Yeah. I think it's like a either pad thai or pad cu. We have a little shrimp action.
A Thai noodle dish of sorts.
Yes, with some broccoli, some little
Mm,
add-ons, mild spicy.
okay.
Um, we also have some hydration here, very important. But I'm just still in awe of the transition. Like it was bad. I felt
It
for
was quick.
anyone who interacted with me this morning. It
So
was
I have a confession too. I actually didn't have any caffeine until like so I'm probably a little bit like of a zombie as well. So I think we both were in a weird space.
it's balanced. It's balanced out. Like, yeah, it's been some craziness. I finally got, excuse me, I got like caught by the flight apocalypse
Mm,
of 2024.
yeah,
I
the
don't
the
wish
blue
that
screen
on,
of death flight. Yeah,
yeah, I don't wish that.
yeah,
I don't wish that on
yeah.
anyone. But yeah, so that
Well, I'm
was,
glad you're back. I'm glad that we're like back to normal here.
oh my gosh,
And
yes.
I'm really excited about today. We have a very special guest that'll be joining us in a few. We'll bring him on in a few minutes. D Pro or David. I'm not gonna pronounce his last name correctly, and I feel bad about that. Uh,
Prothero. I don't know.
Prothero. We'll get
Prothero.
him to
No.
correct us. Prothero.
Okay, great. Wow. What
David Prothero.
horrible. We literally told him, we're like, this is going to be easy and nice.
Yeah, we're
And
like,
we're
this is
like,
gonna be
mess
easy.
while we
But
mess up.
David was an interesting and I'm going to talk about him without him here for a minute, even though he can hear in the background. Just in case. David was interesting. Bianca was just commenting before. David like left the DevNet and then rejoined, but neither Bianca nor I had met David before he came back. And so all of a sudden it's like, this guy's coming back, and everyone was like freaking out and was like so excited. And we were like, who is this guy? And I have since had the opportunity to meet with him a few times in person at our live events, just chat with him. David is such a great wealth of information on Twilio. And specifically, he came back to revamp our whole Docs platform. So we're going to dive into Docs. Docs are super important to me at Twilio. I mean, honestly, I think they're one of the things that got me excited about Twilio before I even worked here, was like how good their docs were and how good their that whole system was. So I'm really excited to bring him on, and that's just going
No,
to be
yeah.
great. Is there anything? Yeah. Is
No,
there
yeah.
anything else you want to talk about before?
No, yeah. Even as you were talking about docs, like I feel like Twilio was so beloved at so many hackathons because it was one of those things of just like, Twilio's docs are easy. Just you can get started pretty quick.
Mm-hmm.
So I think definitely like docs can sometimes not get as much love because it's like the docs, It's like,
Yeah.
all right, well, what's there? So I think that was exciting. And then again, yeah, like I think when I saw like D Pros coming back, and it was like, wow, in the chat. And I was like, okay, I guess this person brings such deep joy. So I'm also excited to just kind of learn more about, DPro's adventures. Here at Twilio. Twilio has changed a ton. So I even think like I'm always fascinated to see like I'm not calling him olds, but the OGs, the old, the Twilio, old heads in terms of time at Twilio, not age, but yeah. So I call Brent an old head too. So or the chef.
Well, he's in the comments saying I am old, and Brent's. Let's bring DPro on. Let's bring bring David on here. Hello.
Hey.
Did I pronounce it right eventually?
You did the second time. Yes, Prothero.
I had to go to at Twilio Slack for people who have hard to pronounce names. I really appreciate it that in their Slack bio they put their little like alliteration of their name, and that's I just had to go look there. Prothero. Do you have like a preference if we call you David or DPro? I feel like I should have asked that before.
It's your call. It's your call. Okay. The only stipulation I always have is don't call me Dave. So that's it.
Oh.
Ooh, that's gonna be no. I'm kidding. That's fine. I cannot call you Dave. I'll call you Davey instead. How's that? No.
Oh boy.
How do we get there, Alex?
We'll get there. I want to start by acknowledging your background here.
All right.
It looks like you're in a dungeon.
A little bit.
You got some like fun stuff behind you. Thanks for going full screen there, Brent. And I know that like I think it was during the pandemic, if I remember correctly, you kind of like you and your whole family fell in love with D&D. Is that right?
It's actually before the pandemic. So I've been playing since probably about 2017. And it was actually our team on the developer education that introduced me to the game, and I just fell hard. And as you can see, have invested a little bit of money into it now.
That's awesome. I have played myself. I spend my like thing that I enjoy the most on Saturday on like weekends is like while I'm just doing stuff around the house, watching some like live play D&D stuff.
Sure.
Comedians playing Dungeons and Dragons is like, in my opinion, just perfect. Like you get a bunch of improv people up there and just like alternating between like being really serious and being really silly.
Right.
It's the funniest thing for me. My wife will be like, why are you laughing so much? What is happening? What could possibly be going on in this 2-hour thing that you're watching that is like that funny?
Right. It's a time investment, that's for sure.
It's a time investment. Yeah.
But honestly, our game, like when I play here, like with my crew and my family, we have a couple games going. It's pretty much, I would say, 75% goofy chaos happening, know, and then like the dramatic moments.
I also feel like this weird thing happens where it's like the sillier the setting, the more serious the game, or the like more serious the setting, the sillier you get.
Yeah.
There's like this weird inverse thing that happens, I think.
Yeah.
The chart. I'll just have the Alex chart.
Yeah. And as a game master, like I'm coming up with names for NPCs, non-player characters. So like the characters that the players aren't playing. And I will come up with a name for an NPC, and then they will find a way to make fun of it. Like they will find some way that it's goofy or silly or, mispronounce it in a way. And it's just like, I don't know why I bother. I've heard Matt Mercer, popular game master out there for one of those live play shows. He talks about that all the time too, that they make fun of his
can't
NPC
win
names. No.
Yeah.
No.
And do you tend to like come up with your own source material when you're being a dungeon master, or do you tend to like use the stuff that's out there and kind of play off that?
So it's been an interesting evolution. I started off just going by the book, and then like I get a published adventure and just go exactly what's in the book. And then my most recent campaign is completely homebrew, what they call homebrew.
Nice.
I've made up the plot, I've made up the the world, but then what I do is I will take pieces from an adventure here or an adventure here, a race. Like I don't know how familiar people are with D&D, but like there's one setting called Eberron, and it's like this future setting, and I actually am using that setting for like the other side of the planet on my world. But it's like, imagine if it was Eberron, but like 1,000 years ago it was destroyed, and so it's
Right.
just the remnants of Eberron. So stuff like that. And so so you have this endless book and resources of all these information, and you can pull names out of it and things like that. So it makes it really easy, but then you're still got those creative juices flowing of like you're actually crafting a whole new story and just plugging in pieces.
Yeah. It actually reminds me a little bit of coding, now that you're thinking about like how you write an application or code, because it's a mix of like you writing the foundation yourself, like whatever the code is, like it's there, but like you don't have to write every little piece. A lot of times you can go and use an API for this, or go and pull a code sample to help you fill that in. So it kind of reminds me of how you might think about coding and whatnot. But I feel like we're not getting enough. Like, so I don't know where Robertables is, because he will go run with me on the D&D stuff, and no one in chat now is doing it. So let's keep cruising.
I remember I was in a Discord, a D&D Discord for a D&D creator, and like I'm typing, and then I see Robertables is asking questions. I'm like, hey, I know you.
You're like, Robertables is everywhere. I guess I'm also curious, like, even as we're thinking about just like, you know, creating things, like, are there any, like, what are you building outside of kind of these new worlds, right? Like, are there any projects that you find yourself like tinkering on lately?
So I love tinkering. I have so one of my kids upgraded her game server, so she got a new gaming rig. So I got her old one and set it up as a server, and running Kubernetes on it, and just playing with technology, right? And so it's like it runs Windows, so I can play Baldur's Gate on it. It's got a Linux VM. I put like 64 gigs of RAM in it, and it's running all kinds of different services on Kubernetes, just to play with, like nothing like production or useful, or just having fun. So that's kind of how my tinkering. We redid the Wi-Fi in our house, and that was kind of fun, learning how to like transmit Ethernet over coax cable, because we didn't have like Cat5 running through the house, and that actually works really well, by the way.
Nice. I'll have to try that out at some point. I've done a lot of like trying to terminate Cat5 in my house, but I haven't.
Yeah, we ran a bunch. We have a 2-story house, so we ran a bunch through the attic. So we've got the whole top floor wired up. But to get like a hard link downstairs, that would have been really, really hard. So but there's already coax in the house, and we just ran it over that. You just get these 2 little boxes on each end, and it translates it. And
cool. I didn't know that.
It works great. I'm getting 2.5 gigabits over it. So
wow.
Yeah.
What's actually interesting, even as I'm hearing you talk, whether it's like from the D&D stuff to even like, you know, redoing your Wi-Fi, like this learning, like even just like this learning, this curiosity. Absolutely. I feel like you're like, I'm gonna figure it out. Like I don't know. I guess, how do you approach that, like that learning journey, right? Like how do you, because that was one thing I'm picking up, right? Which is you're like, whatever, I'll learn this thing that I've never done before.
Yeah. I'm learning solar right now because I want to put in a solar system. But yes, no, it's always starts from a thing I want to do or a problem I want to solve. Like I don't ever learn stuff just because I want to learn it. Like that's never worked. I need something interesting to build, and like something that's going to help me, like, so I kind of keep I have the motivation to keep going on it. So like I've tried to build like a note-taking system for my D&D stuff, and I built out all this stuff. I used Vercel and XJS, and I learned how to process markdown files and did all this stuff. I'm like, oh, hey, maybe other people want this. And then I start doing some research, and I find this program called Obsidian, and it like does everything I just did, plus a ton of more things, plus has plugins.
How often does that happen? It's like, oh yeah, it's done.
Exactly. It's like, but had I researched like, okay, what exists out there first, I probably would have never built that. And I learned so much. And like, in fact, a lot of what I did, I actually took those learnings and applied them to when we redid the Docs platform. So
nice.
it ended up coming out pretty handy.
That's I feel like that I'm the same way, where it's like, if I want to learn something, I need to have a project with it. Otherwise, I'm just not going to get to it. Like, I'm not going to learn something for the sake of learning it.
I kind of like that. Maybe that's what I should have implemented. Because I think sometimes I'll be like, and I'm going to learn this. And it's like, all right, it stays to the side, versus if you give yourself like a date, a task that's associated. But yeah, I think even on the aspect of like building something that exists already, I do think it allows you to appreciate like the tools that you do find. So then it's like when you are, kind of when you are finding that other solution, you're like, okay, this is pretty good. This hits the boxes. And I love how it's kind of even translated to like some of the docs. But yeah, okay. So I'm also curious. Okay, again, we're learning about each other.
Yeah.
So how long have you been at Twilio?
Let's see, 8 years.
Wow.
I started in 2016. In March of 2016, it was right before a Signal, so like I got thrown in the deep end right away. The interesting thing is, in terms of like the symmetry of my career at Twilio, is when I joined, they were just finishing up a migration of the docs to a new platform. And so the platform that was in place before this new one was here for my entire tenure at Twilio. So
wow.
Yeah.
And what roles have you had? Because you like started on the DevNet and then you moved away and then you came back, right?
Yes. So I started in developer education, and in 2020, before lockdowns, I moved over into marketing to be the engineering manager for the Twilio.com public website, the marketing website. And so I did that for probably a year and a half. And then I moved over into Twilio R&D, which is like the other side of Twilio that like not a lot of us in DevNet get to work in, but worked on an R&D team. My main focus was I was building a documentation website for internal documentation. So like Twilio, of course, has its own cloud infrastructure, and like how you run services in Twilio, how you deploy them, how you deploy your API definitions so that like the API gateway can access your services, all those types of things. And so I helped build a site for keeping all the documentation for the internal platform. And so that was a lot of fun to build that up. Again, another learning process. We used a system called DocuSource, which is really cool. If you've got a smaller documentation site, I highly recommend it. So learned a lot there. And then I would say, it was just over a year ago that folks from developer education started pinging me and asking me questions about, hey, we're gonna move off of Wagtail. We want to move to Docs as code. And then what do you think? How can we do that? How can we get the data out of the old system and things like that? I'm like, wow, you guys are in for a long haul. This is going to be tough. And they're like, oh, we're hiring. Are you interested? And I'm like, yes, yes, let's do this. So yeah, that was a year ago. And,
nice.
That is so funny.
That's great.
I love how you like magically appeared whenever there's like chaos. You're like, hi, hello. Let's build some stuff.
Oh yes, absolutely.
And just for clarification, because it did take me a minute to figure this out, the education team is the Docs team.
Yes.
Yes.
Because
we have like an education team, we have a content team that does blog, and those are two separate things. But I always like education is Docs in Twilio land.
That's a good point. Yes, we manage both the content on the Docs site and the platform itself. So yes.
Mm-hmm. So you disappeared from the DevNet, disappeared is a, you're still, I'm sure, in touch and but like 4 or 5 years ago, and then you came back a year ago. So you had like this kind of like very stark separation picture. Is there anything that you noticed, like how it changed from like in that time you were away that's like that comes to mind?
Oh, it's so much bigger.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when I left, like I felt like I had a personal relationship with almost everybody on the team and like knew everybody. And then like as I was away, I kept seeing new faces show up, and I kind of got to know personalities from afar, but like and then of course people leaving and things like that. And so it was it was interesting to watch. But since I've come back, like I would say like the DevNet is definitely a lot bigger. It's a lot more sort of well organized, I would say. Like with teams that are focused on different areas, right? Like I think in the past it was like when I started, developer education was brand new, and so it was like the first time they'd even thought to like create like a sub team focused on something. Like everybody was just an evangelist and did whatever felt like they could do to serve their community the best. And even when I was education, I ended up doing a lot of other weird things, like going to conferences and things like that. So to me, the biggest difference would just be like there's a lot more focus on different areas, and there's like crews built up around it. It's pretty cool.
So I guess even like diving a little bit deeper there. So like what I'm hearing is that like I think early days there was a lot of building the foundation, right? So you know, kind of establishing the foundation. So I guess I'm curious to see like where do you feel like we're at now? Right? Like we've built a lot of the foundations, and this could just apply for DevNet at Twilio or even just like developer networks at large. So like there was a lot of foundation building, but like, where do you feel like we're at?
Yeah, there was a lot of foundation building, that's for sure. And I would say like, if we're using the house metaphor, then the walls are up. There are, the frame is up, and the various teams are like responsible for the different rooms, and they're starting to finish it. But the cool thing is like there's sometimes demo that happens too. Like, okay, we built it. No, don't put that wall there. Tear that down. And sometimes even the foundation, you have to drill into the foundation and change some stuff around too. But for the most part, it's definitely there's a maturing process that has happened. And like I said, back when I was dev ed, I did a little bit of everything, and now my role is very focused on just the platform for the documentation and like the technology that goes under it, as opposed to writing some of the docs, maybe creating a tutorial here, writing a blog post over there, going to a super class and that kind of thing. So
do you miss any of that?
Sometimes, and I'll always raise my hand if I'm interested in something. So
as you've raised your hand to join us on stream here today.
Yay!
Yeah, totally. So I'm really excited about what we built. So happy to share it as much as I can.
Yeah, why don't we jump into that now? What was the motivation here? Like, why did we want to redo the whole Docs platform?
So I would say that there were a number of things. One was, so we were on a CMS, which content management system called Wagtail. And it's really cool content management platform. It's open source. It's built on Python and the framework called Django. It used a Postgres backend. And it was super easy for people to contribute to the docs. And so at the time, like the idea was we need docs to be self-service for everybody across Twilio to be able to document their things. And it was such a powerful platform that we built it for docs first, but like the marketing website piled on. And so the marketing website was running off of Wagtail, and the blog and Code Exchange, and all these things just started piling on it. And it was so flexible, the CMS was, that it ended up becoming like a victim of its own success, right? Like, we just ended up with all these things running on it. It started to get like a little slow. It was hard to develop on. because there were so many different components and things that were on it. So, and then of course, just dealing with content being in a database, we were very reliant on the CMS to like keep track of like history changes and things like that. It didn't have a lot of collaboration features. And of course, this whole time, you know, during we chose the CMS way back 8 years ago, which was of course right at the time that like Docs as code was starting to become visible to everyone. And of course, over those 8 years, it's become like the de facto standard way to like build the Docs site. You put Markdown in a GitHub repository. That's where all the collaboration happens. And then you publish it to a site, usually like a statically generated website that is super fast. You know, you're not waiting for a database to respond to be able to load a page, things like that. So we had the idea of like, we need to improve our development process. We need to improve the performance so that the experience for our customers is a lot better. And we just wanted a better way to manage all of this documentation. And at the same time, like the philosophy of the education team was wanting to take a more active hand in the documentation quality itself. And so like, we need tools that work for us. So the like ease of the CMS wasn't the top priority. We are doing everything we can to like educate folks in the whole GitHub workflow. So like product managers can submit PRs, pull requests to make documentation changes, but then the developer education team comes in and does reviews. We've been able to like automate all kinds of things like our style guide to like make sure that the prose that's being written is following our style guide, things like that. So
nice. And so like I had an experience using Docs as code. I'm actually wearing a robotic raw shirt right now. I was working at a place that had a big that managed a big open source robotics library, and we all did Docs. It was Docs as code. It was the website was Docs as code, the tutorial pages, all the documentation. It was all in GitHub. And in a team where everybody was a developer, it was great because everyone knew how to use GitHub. And it was just like, it was so easy and it was so nice. How has it been? Like you just mentioned kind of getting like product managers to get in there and do it on GitHub. Has that been a challenge? Like from an internal stakeholders, like are you having to engage with people who aren't used to using GitHub, and how has that gone?
Yeah, no, that's a good question because yes, that's true. We have been engaging with folks who aren't familiar with the GitHub workflow. What's interesting is our director for the education team comes from GitHub, Jen Lever. And so she worked on the GitHub docs. And so, you know, obviously there was that motivation there. And I guess my understanding is that GitHub, everybody has to know how to use GitHub. Your legal documents are handled through GitHub and things like that. So I think we did have that challenge of having to educate folks on how to do it. Thankfully, like GitHub, the user interface has developed over time, so where there's tools that you can use to author things just right there in the web browser.
Yeah, that does make it a lot easier.
You can like find the document you want to edit. You say, I'm going to edit it. You make your changes. You click a button and it opens a pull request for you. That makes so much more sense for like the markdown stuff in the docs, because it's really easy to just like preview it in the browser. It doesn't make as much more sense that like you can't do that for code, because like at some point you need to run the code and make sure it works. But for docs, it's perfect.
One of the
No, go ahead.
No, keep going.
I was just gonna say, like, one of the things that we did build was we're using Vercel, and they have this ability so that when you open a pull request, it'll like create like a preview site for any of your changes that you make. So whether we're making code changes or it's just somebody making documentation set changes, you get a nice preview of what it looks like.
Robertables, thanks for joining us. You missed the D&D talk. We were waiting in chat, and all we got was people being like, I don't get this. I don't play this game.
Right.
But now you're here and you missed it. So you have to go back and watch it later.
You have to catch up on all the D&D talk. One of the things that came up earlier when you were talking was just like the experience started to get like not so great for customers or for users. I hate using customers, just users. But I would say, like, how do you feel like a lot of the changes like really turn it up a notch, right, for folks? Yeah, like how did those improvements like really make an impact?
I would say like the biggest thing is, well, there's two things, right? There's the performance of the site. And so like you click and and then the page loads. And so, you know, we've got the pages loading super fast now. And so it's just easier to like explore the site. Like you're not getting fatigued waiting for pages to load as you like browse and the site, try to discover what it is you're looking for. Next.js does cool things like when it loads a page, it'll like look at all the links on the page and like prefetch them in the background so that when you click them, they are load immediately. And so there's that whole performance side that I think helps. And then on the sort of like the part that you don't quite see, like behind the curtain, is the platform, the whole corpus of all the documentation that we have, which is like over 6,000 pages, and way more code samples than that. The whole management of it from our side is so much easier. Like stupid simple things you would think you could be able to do, but like search and replace, like in a CMS is not necessarily a thing, but like in a repo full of markdown files, it's super fast and easy. So like our ability to keep the quality of the documentation up to a higher bar has just gone up a lot. And so I think that's probably one of the biggest things. I see there's a question for the guests.
I know, we'll get to that question in a second. So you're basically saying like our speed to fix things is just much faster.
Yes, our speed to fix things, our ability to like take a look at a whole section of the docs and like make structural changes to the information architecture so it's easier to browse and consume and comprehend.
Yeah, I think it can be so easy to just like ignore a lot of things and not realize like you have your maintainers, you have your contributor, like there's such an ecosystem within open source. And I think like making sure you're kind of providing great resources to everyone involved and not just kind of like, here's the docs, right? And I think sometimes people can kind of forget that. So I love how you're like, yes, we're focusing on performance, but also the people that are managing this shouldn't have like a really horrible experience.
Exactly. Yep. And being able to take advantage of the whole, like, you know, using docs as code. So all the automation tools that are in place.
CI/CD stuff.
We can do linting of the markdown, and we can, you know, there's a tool called Veil we use for making sure the prose is following our style guide and spelling is correct. And then we even have our own custom linting rules that we've implemented for specific things that we want to make sure that we're checking for.
It took me a while to learn what linting was. Can you explain linting for anyone who doesn't know?
Yeah, linting, I guess,
do you know what linting is?
No.
Okay. I don't know the etymology of the word. Something to do with like getting the lint out of your pockets or something. I don't know. But what it is it's not like a compiler for your code, but it does parse your code, be that, you know, Python or JavaScript or Markdown. It parses it into a syntax tree and then analyzes it and looks for common problems, right? So, you know, like maybe you are using a variable name that you haven't declared yet, or you declare a constant and you try to change its value, it can tell you, oh, you can't do that. In Markdown, like we have different rules about like headings. Like, so if you have a heading level 1, you can't have another level heading, level 1 heading, because you should only have one in a document. And then if you under that try to add a third level heading, it'll say, hey, you can't nest a third level under a first level, that you got to have a second level under there, things like that. So it just looks syntactically at whatever code it is you're writing, and offers you suggestions on how to fix them. Sometimes they can even fix them automatically for you.
Right. It's almost like, I almost think of it like formatting rules, almost like things that are not like hard, like, oh, your code won't work or compile. Things that are just like, hey, we don't do it this way. Like
style.
This is how it's supposed to. Yes, it's stylistic.
It's usually for style. There tend to be a little bit of an overlap of like functional things as well. But yeah, it's mostly about style.
Yeah,
and
especially
it does come
when
from lint in your pockets.
Especially when you have like just larger, everyone comes in with their own style from their own startups or their own companies. It's like, well, we did it like this here. And it's like, I think kind of creating that consistency across, like, okay.
Yeah.
It's good. We had a guest.
We had a question. We had a guest say, hey, RJ Pearson, thanks for joining us. We're happy to see you here. And then we had a question that I'm gonna rephrase from Roberto Walls. He said, what do you think is more mean? Counterspelling Revivify or Silvery Barbsing a death save? Those are all a lot of word salad of our D&D things. I understand it. I don't know which one's meaner. It's got to be.
Which one is meaner? Dude, the death saving throw is pretty bad, but Revivify, I mean, they're both bad. Wow.
Yeah.
I would say the counterspelling Revivify is the worst, just because it's a higher level spell that you're making them waste.
Expensive. Yeah.
And at least a death saving throw, unless it's like the last saving throw, and if you fail, you're gonna die, and the silvery barbs that. So I never use counterspell against my party, and this is the understanding. I will never use it against you, as long as you don't use it against me.
Ooh.
Oh.
So somebody rolled out counterspell against me, and so then later in the fight, it was like they went to cast a spell, and I go, and the mage counterspells your your invocation. Yes.
Yeah. D-Pro's like, don't start it. You know, we'll keep it going.
Roberto also brought up another DM trick that I've heard before that I've thought about using, which is you don't tell the table how you're doing on death throws, because it increases the tension of whether they're going to come back or not.
Yes, definitely.
So that's something to try. But yeah, cool. You know, we just went into some. What do we say? Do we start the tabs versus spaces? Nope, we're not going there. Nope, we're not doing tabs versus spaces.
Not at all.
Don't need that. And D&D was deep enough for us here.
Yes.
I
would rather talk about the election.
Yeah. Oof. We were laughing because both D-Pro and I got text messages talking about Barbara Streisand's political views.
Right.
My last one was like literally Barbara Streisand, blah blah. I'm like, why is that in a political text? But it happens.
Shout out to our, shout out to
Babs for trying to sway these elections.
Very.
Yeah. One thing I want to point out about linting: the first linter came out of like AT&T Bell Labs in the 70s. Like that's how old this stuff is. That's kind of wild that we're still using that term.
Yeah, and I could imagine back in those days, like compiling your program was probably a lot more expensive and time consuming. Yeah. So having sort of an intermediate layer of like helping you catch some problems and then making sure you're following standards was helpful.
Cool. Should we dive into a demo? Bianca, do you have more questions, or should we dive into showing off some of the Docs platform?
No, we can D-Pro, I'm like, this man is so cool. I'm not, okay, sorry y'all. I'm not saying I had like low expectations for this stream, but I think it's more so like when you're not familiar with someone, you're like, oh my gosh, like, this might be awkward. We're being honest and vulnerable here. But I was just like, oh, like it's been kind of cool. Like we're talking about all these different topics. So I think it's like, I guess it's exciting to realize like, oh, you haven't learned as much about even the people around you, right? So like,
there you go.
Yeah, you know what I mean? So I don't know. I guess this has felt like exciting. You know what I mean?
Awesome.
You're also the first guest that we've had on that doesn't have the title of evangelist. So I think every other guest we've had is somebody who's like, they get up and talk at conferences all the time and they do this.
Yeah.
And you're the first one who's like doesn't have that, which is awesome. And we like that. We need a little more diversity of job title here. But like, I mean, it also helps that you used to do this. Like this was your OG job.
Right.
But you know, you never know when somebody's, you know, how used to being in front of a camera are they?
And also, I also think like, especially with docs, like docs can feel like they're in this like corner of the world. And it's just like, a lot of the docs folks are like super chill, very fun people. But I think it's like like they're in the docs cave. And
yes. Sometimes I feel like I'm in the cave. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think again, to like kind of get to know a lot of the folks that work on docs, just kind of the frameworks of thinking, the passion around learning. I think to me, it's just like pretty exciting. Kind of pretty exciting. So that was just kind of a joy.
Yeah, and I mean, I just want to shout out to Micah, who's I think joined us here and there. She makes my favorite presentations on the DevNet.
Oh my goodness.
At one point, she made a presentation. I think it was last summer. It was when Barbie and Oppenheimer were out there, and she made a whole presentation about the like using the different like summer blockbuster movies compared to like what was going on in the docs team. It was the most clever presentation I've ever seen, and like it was so engaging. So you got some really lovely people over there. Happy to have some more representation from the docs.
I guess maybe that's like a side tangent though, but like I feel like, you know, being on the docs team, like where do you feel like your personality or who you are shows up? Because you are oftentimes like, you know, representing a brand or like do you feel like you get to like show parts of yourself, right? Like on your professional journey?
Oh, definitely. Like, I mean, that's just the part of being on like a small team, I think. I am known as the one who's always cracking jokes. So I mean, I'm on a fairly engineering focused team, right? Like under education, we've kind of split ourselves up into little teams. So I'm on the platform team. So like we're doing, you know, agile, you know, writing tickets and things like that. But I'm usually the one who put a funny GIF in a Jira ticket, or like when we do our retrospective, we have this collaborative board that you drag stuff onto, and people are putting Post-it notes on, you know, what worked really well this sprint, what didn't work, and I'm always adding little graphics next to things. And like, so like I came up with this thing where they needed a way to be able to page somebody from the platform team, if like in Slack, if they needed help on the platform, like somebody on the education team, just like it got to a point, okay, we need to escalate this. And our team name was Platform. So I was looking for a Slack emoji you could use. And I started typing plat, and up came platypus. And it was Perry the Platypus from a cartoon called Phineas and Ferb. I'm like, that's perfect. So now when you have to page us, you have to add the Perry the Platypus emoji. He has become like the unofficial mascot of our team. I've got stickers on my laptop already, and yep.
I love it. It
doesn't work. So if you ever need, if any Twilions are watching, if you need to page the docs team and you don't have that emoji, it's not going to work.
Right.
Perry the platform opus.
I was like, Chef Brent, is there merch? You know, do we have t-shirts? You know, might get the merch coming soon. DevNet merch.
It's definitely trademarked, so be careful. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That is true. That's real. Yeah. That's real. Okay. All right.
But
so we got
total tangent. Like they have platypuses at the San Diego Zoo, and we went and saw them, and it was amazing. And then on the whiteboard where they had like the feeding schedule for the platypuses, or is it platypi? I don't know what's the plural of platypus. We'll see if anybody in the chat knows what the plural of platypus is. But in the corner was a hand drawing of Perry the Platypus, and then it was signed. And they said, yeah, Dan Povenmire, one of the producers and the guy who draws Perry, was here, and he drew on our board, and we left it there.
I like that.
No, too good. Apparently, yes, it's platypuses. I will always say, I always crack up and I'm like, Twilio one day is gonna be like, why are you Googling the plural of platypuses? I often wonder, like, oh shoot, hey Craig. Hey Craig. I was like, just in time. We're about to start talking about the docs, or we're gonna go
start showing off the docs. We've been talking about it for a minute now.
Yeah, and we got some good comments. Like the new doc site is great. Nice work from the team. So go team, go!
Yay!
Yay! You
All
can't
right.
spell Craig without AI. Oh my gosh. Anywho, sorry.
Yeah, that's such a cool thing that the doc site preloads one level of links just in case.
Yeah. So I don't know. Are we broadcasting the screen now? My share.
There we go.
Awesome.
Now we are
on transition. Yeah. Now we've got your screen.
Yeah. So this is the
Can you go ahead and zoom in a little bit?
Yes, I can.
Oh yeah. Oh, and we've got a Dom. Wow, we got a party here.
Who was that voice in my head?
That voice, that was.
Is it Cloud Brent or the chef of Brent?
Right?
I don't know. We don't know.
Yeah, right. So we've got a new homepage. You can explore the documentation by category or use case, which is pretty dope. But I mean, for me, from a platform perspective, like I just love that I can, click on that. I don't know if anybody saw how fast I loaded, but it was pretty fast. So yeah, if I go back to the homepage, like if I'm interested in messaging, I can click that. There we are, programmable messaging. And so we've got, ways to browse the documentation, different things for guiding you through your process. But for example, if I want the API reference for the message resource, here we can see the message properties and things like that. And the cool thing is the way that this works is it's actually loading all the content from our public open API spec. So that's on GitHub.
Oh, so if they change the open API spec, it'll automatically change in the docs. Like
Indeed.
If they're connected. Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I'm going to love showing like the behind the scenes stuff. So I'm constantly going to show that stuff. So like, for me as a Twilion, I've got this little edit button that I can click on and it takes me to the repo. And we can see here's the markdown of this document. But if I look at the code, there we go. So we've got like different fields we can add to it. We're saying that this is an API page type and that this is the resource that it's talking about, which is from the 2010 version account message resource. You've got, your typical markdown. And then you'll see like this little directive is what we call it, where it says properties. So if we go, if you're looking for how to respond, and then below that, it's like message status values. So right here is where we like inserted the table of all the properties. So like if you're looking for how to respond, so now, boom, it just inserts it from the open API spec.
That's so cool.
And then, so then after all those properties, it continues on with the content. Did you have a question?
So now if the dev team updates the open API spec, let's say they change a term or they add something, it just goes through. What was the process like before when they would make a change to the API?
The process before was it depended on what you were changing, but it had to go through like I think 3 different GitHub repos and pipelines that built things and tested things. Now it's a little bit more straightforward. Also, it used to work off like this proprietary format that we used to use for APIs, defining our APIs, and then we've now internally standardized everything to open API. So like being able to work with open API was pretty critical. Nice. And then if you go to particular actions, so like here's how to create a message, and so you post to this endpoint. And again, we have similar tables, like here are the path parameters that you can pass, the request body parameters. And the cool thing is like code samples. So like how to send an SMS. So we've got, Node, Python, C#, Java, Go, etc. Even our CLI and just a basic curl command. And it's just insanity to try to manage all these code samples by hand. And so the way this works is we've written a code generator that generates the code samples from the OpenAPI, based on the OpenAPI specs. But in the Markdown, when you want a code sample, you create a code fence like normal, but instead of a specific language, we call it dynamic code sample. And then you give it some parameters on what it is you want. Like, here's the title, here's the path I want it to hit in our API, the method, post, and then here's the parameters I want to pass. And then we've written the code that figures that out and then renders this code sample with the code and the output.
It writes all the code. You just literally put in the values of like the two.
Yes, all the author does is this. They just put which API endpoint you want to hit and method you want to use and what parameters do you want to pass. And then it generates all these samples.
Was that like is that something that like was built in with the OpenAPI spec, or did we have to write that whole process?
Yeah, we did actually have to write that ourselves. We wrote it. We had something similar back on the old platform back in the day that we had in Python, and now this new version is written in TypeScript.
Yeah.
And the old platform would fetch them sort of like, client server style, where as it's rendering the page, it's fetching code samples, and now everything's like rendered together, a static website. And so it does all the code samples as it's building.
That's so cool that it literally just like generates them all for you.
Yeah.
And did you have to write that uniquely for each API endpoint, or is it the kind of thing where like you wrote general enough code that it can figure it out based on?
It doesn't matter what endpoint you're referring to. It supports all of them. And one of the cool things is some newer Twilio APIs are supporting like JSON body support, where normally like historically Twilio APIs have used form and quoted parameters. And so we've been working on adjusting the code sample generator to support that. But yeah, I mean, like one of the cool things is like we made some changes to our Node.js generator, for example. And one of the things was we wanted to demonstrate using async and await, as that's a little bit more modern. But we also then needed to make sure that we were doing it in a way that would compile even in CommonJS, or if you're running an older version of Node that doesn't support async and await at the top level of a file. So the cool thing is we made the change to our sample. We didn't have to change thousands of code samples. We just changed the generator, and then they all get the new.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah,
I love that. And shout out to we have Wade joining us. Wade's is he the product manager?
Product manager, project? PM.
Yeah. Right.
Okay.
So I'm sure you work closely with Wade figuring all this stuff out.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. Yep. Wade is definitely helpful wrangling all of the cats at Twilio, all the different engineering teams. And when we have a question of like, why do you have this parameter in two places in the OpenAPI spec? Is that right? Or does that need to be things like that? So, yeah.
All the cross-functionalness, the adventures.
Yeah, there's a lot of cat herding to be done.
Wrangling via Slack. That is how I feel like most wrangling at Twilio, probably most wrangling at any remote first company, happens via Slack.
Right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And so for those that are interested in kind of the behind the scenes, what we ended up building with was we're using MDX, which is like an extension on top of Markdown, which allows like JSX type syntax. So like you can have React components. I don't think there might be any in this particular document, but and then in addition, so MDX, we use this Next MDX remote so that we can use it with Next.js. And so Next.js is sort of like the framework that hosts the docs. We're doing mostly what's called static site generation. We do have a little bit of sort of incremental server-side rendering if you go to our error codes, because the error codes come from another service inside Twilio. So I think it's API errors. Yep, there they are. So it's sort of statically rendering them, but it's just like statically rendering them as they get requested and then caching it for like an hour. And then, you can click to bring up an error. And so then we are using Twilio Paste, which is our design system. And so some people may have heard of like, I don't know, Bootstrap or material design. So we actually have our own in-house design system called Twilio Paste, and it's available as a React component library. It's actually open source. So if you go to
if you want to make something look like the Twilio console,
.twilio.design, there's all the documentation, how to download it, etc. So we're using that. We deployed all to Vercel, and they've been a great partner with us. And we've got a little bit of like AWS infrastructure behind the scenes, and so we like Terraform. We Terraform our Vercel projects, so we have like dev, stage, and prod. So those are all managed by Terraform, and then as well as any sort of like AWS integration happens there too.
I just love even going back to some of the stuff before, where if the dev teams change something, it's like it's just there. Like obviously at some point you need to update the docs if stuff changes enough, and knowing that is really important. Like you don't want it to be static, but like if they're doing little things or that they're little stuff like that, it's just so cool that it all kind of just happens. And I personally use the code samples in the docs all the time. I end up using the curl ones because I don't always get to use the I don't always get to use the, like some of the places I develop, like if you're writing code in like Google Apps Script or like Airtable, you can't use that. You can't pull in the node libraries. And so I like curl gives me enough of the format to like, oh, this is how I use a fetch command.
I also think just spending, just like spending way less time on the like, how do I want to build this versus what do I want to build? And I think that to me is often like that underrated part of just like, when this is easy, it just makes everything else easier, right? Like, so yeah. No. Also, we might have to have our security team check in on Roberto.
I noticed that. Yeah.
I was just like, wow. Just
he always has to go there, right? I mean,
literally, I was like, wow, here we were.
In fact, I do believe the Paste has specific. Let's see, where's the theme overview? I was gonna say there's different themes, and there's like a default. Default Tark and Twilio Dark, which you are not allowed to use. So I don't know.
Yeah. Now we know. It's in chat. It is in chat too. So we have if something ever, if we ever see a little pop-up website, I don't know, maybe we'll go looking for you, Convertibles. We know where to find you. I don't know. We don't really, but
Chef Brent might, but I don't know.
That's true. LOL. Okay. Sorry, I went on a little tangent. But yes, back to you.
This docs thing is, and I know that like you guys have done stuff to get more people involved. Do you have, with this new setup, do you have more people contributing from different teams? How have you guys seen the reaction internally to this?
The reaction internally generally depends on their experience level with Git. And so if somebody's a developer and they're familiar with the Git workflow, they are like, this is awesome. This is amazing. Yeah. I love this. This is so cool that we're doing this now. If somebody hasn't, then there is some trepidation. But we've put together a lot of cool resources for folks. In fact, we are, I don't know if you want to use the term dog fooding our own platform. So here you go. We got docs about Twilio Docs.
I was gonna say.
Yeah,
I was like, are there docs about the docs?
Yes.
And lo and behold,
so this
there
helps.
are.
Yeah, this helps guide authors through how to set up their environment, how to edit the docs on GitHub.
Is this built as Docs as code?
It is. It's in the same repo as the public doc. We just have like a off enabled on this path so that only Twilions can get to it. But yeah, everybody's seeing all behind the scenes stuff. So yeah, they've been really appreciative of that. And once they've sort of got into the swing of things, they really like it. Like being able to see an easy diff of changes that are being made, the preview site stuff, and things like that. They're really appreciative, and they've been like.
I wish more things took a Git approach. Like if I could get presentations to have like Git diff and stuff like that. Oh my, it would be like it would be so great, because then it would be so much easier to share presentations and fork them and create new ones and pull parts from one and another. But like I feel like you get spoiled with like how good Git can be if you know how to use it and if you can like know how to see it. Roberto says I can use MDX for my slides.
He is right. You can use MDX for your slides. I have done it, not customer facing, because I can't get the templates to look really nice, but they're great for internal stuff. But yeah, you just write Markdown and it'll turn the different headings into your slides for you. It's pretty cool.
I might have to try that, because that would be nice.
I mean, we kind of, like one of the things we ended up doing was just like, Alex was like, why are we duplicating things? And we're just like, here is a baseline presentation that we use, and we would just pull from that.
Right.
So yeah.
And one thing I'm going to throw in chat really quick. We actually, I think Wade wrote a blog post about this stuff. So if you want to dive deeper and learn more on your own about this and how we're kind of talking about it, there's a really great blog post about this as well.
And that definitely goes into a lot of the like history, where we were, why we wanted to make the change, and then I'm planning on a little bit later to come through with like a more technical post on the sort of the platform and how everything's wired together. One of the other engineers on our team, Sean, he is going to be writing some UI UX related posts about his learnings. I think we're gonna keep people abreast of like what we've been working on internally too.
And RJ Pearson had a great question. Is there a process for external people contributing new blog posts /docs? I don't think we have external contributors on the docs. We do on the blog, so that is definitely a thing. We have the voices page that Brent just said. If you find one of us and send us an email, RJ Pearson, we can help direct you to the right people there. But we love seeing external contributors. I've actually had the pleasure of reviewing a few blog posts from external contributors, and it's a lot of fun. I had one. Somebody wrote made a button that when you push it on a Raspberry Pi, it sends a text message. And I was like, oh, I got a Raspberry Pi at home. I'm gonna review that one. So we love to see external contributors to the blog, and it's just a great way to get out there.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if you do have comments or suggestions on the docs, check out the little widget. We're actually in the process of changing that. We're gonna move from 5 stars to just thumbs up, thumbs down. But click a rating, and then it'll pop up, and you can add any notes, and that goes right to us in Slack. And so if you do see things that need clarification in the docs or corrections or whatever, we're definitely happy to see those.
RJ Pearson, are you a champion? Are you on the, because you said I'll reach out via the champions program. Are you one of our Twilio champions? Might take him a second with the lag to respond to that, but
we'll find out.
No JS.
Yes, he is. Sweet. We're so excited about that. The champions program is, and I hope I do it justice talking about it, but we basically have a bunch of like really awesome external people who build super cool stuff with Twilio and get to keep talking about it. and we just relaunched it recently and have our first cohort, and we're looking to get some people on the stream later this year from the Champions program. So if you're interested, RJ Pearson, definitely reach out through Kat, who manages the program, and say that you want to come join us on stream, and whatever you want to talk, we can build something. We'll do it with you, and then maybe that'll become your blog post.
There you go.
Yeah. What have you like learned through this whole process, D-Pro? Like what are some big takeaways that you're just like, because this is a big project and like it's awesome what you guys have done. I was so excited the first time I got to install the repo on and make it all work on my computer. But like what do you feel like is some good learnings from this that you want to share?
Wow. So many. I would say that it's always easy to come up with that first prototype, right? And like you could build a doc site in a day with Next.js and deploy it, on like something like Vercel or Netlify. But then there's that long tail of all the details. And so things like your CI/CD, what do you want to check, and working with figuring out, the CI/CD things that are specific to you, like your company. So like at Twilio, we use a particular provider, and it's not GitHub Actions, unfortunately. So we had to, learn how to make use of that. I think, understanding what do we use? We use BuildKite. Okay. Which is pretty flexible. Like it's not as turnkey as GitHub Actions, but you can do amazing things with it. So we use it, and then we have like our own worker machines that we run in-house inside of our private cloud, but then like just figuring out like how all to wire this stuff together. Like if you're using a hosting provider like Vercel, like what's the best way to structure your dev and a staging environment, prod environment, and like what kind of rules do you need to set up in GitHub to make sure that a PR can't be merged unless everything's passing and working right. How do you, this was a big one, like how do you get like the capability of allowing any contributor at Twilio to be able to like view a preview of their deployment without actually having to have a Vercel account to log in and see it. So, working with Vercel on a lot of different things to try to figure these things out, and having their help on it was good. So we have a good Roberto asked a question in the chat. It's if you find yourself stalling on bike shedding dev tools like CI/CD testing tools, linters, etc., how do you lay down the gauntlet to just get one thing done? Okay, I might need a definition on bike shedding, but is that similar to like yak shaving, or? If I'm not mistaken, and someone can correct me in chat, it's bike sheddings where like you start really small and then you just like keep adding more things onto it.
I think as Robertables is like giving us an answer, I did have that question too, which was like, there's so much to so many people, so many things that you could do, like really that aspect of prioritization. Yeah. Like I am like, also what gets pushed to the backlog, what gets prioritized this year. But yeah. Okay. Yeah. Nice. Instead of the idea of bike shedding, instead of building a bike shed, you argue about the color of the bike shed, and the shed never gets built. So like, I think in the CI/CD example, it's like you argue about like what CI/CD are you going to use and how are you going to set that up, and you don't actually build the thing that you're set out to build in the first place. I think as an engineering team, like one thing we've really done is like just build it. And this takes some trust by the team to initially get this set up, but to just build something and then we'll evaluate and we'll iterate. And so I think that trusting that we will reevaluate and continue iterating, continue improving, you have to prove that out. And so when we see something like, oh, this really sucks about our pipeline right now, let's create a ticket,
And then I think when you see that ticket get in the next sprint and we work on it and we continuously do that over and over again, so that like you feel like, yes, I just need to build something. I need to accomplish what like this one ticket or feature is calling for, and then we'll improve it over time. It doesn't have to be perfect. I'm going to build something and ship it, and we'll reevaluate and continue iterating.
And how did you guys operate as like a dev team? Because we're all kind of doing a different dance on different parts of the DevNet, but did you guys have like a Scrum Master and like Scrum sprints? Like how did you organize your kind of dev team within education?
Yeah, I think we have a fair number of folks on the team that are what's the right word? Like not enthused about like rigid rules about like Scrum, like following the exact. So we do an agile type. We do 2-week sprints, but we don't like when we do our sprint planning, we just sort of talk nebulously about what projects we're going to work on. There's no sacred like, oh, we've locked in this many points or things like that. So, and it's just as iterative as the software we work on. So we change the process constantly, and what works well. So we kind of like work in what we call mini teams. So like there will be like maybe 3, maybe 4 projects that we plan to work on for a sprint. And then people will sort of divide up into pairs or maybe 3, depending on the size of the project. And so they kind of worry about their own world of tickets of like, here's, let's throw some points on there. Let's, we need a new ticket to follow up on this, and throwing that on the board. And nobody's like going, yeah, you shouldn't add that to the sprint, things like that. So we try to keep it really loose. And I would say like, so we don't have a Scrum Master. We have a product manager, but like Wade, he's helped facilitate sprints and sprint planning, but so have I, and so have other engineers. Like we had this one engineer, Charlie, that just joined the team, and she had some great ideas, and she just kind of took it and run with it. Like she ran our last sprint planning, and it was so efficient, and we were like, that was great. You just got yourself a new job. No, we don't want to like assign jobs like that, but it was pretty cool. And then we also think about things like at the quarterly level, like I'm planning what projects we want to work on. And to answer one of Robertable's questions about you get to actually work on tickets from the backlog, is that, we will set goals like we want X% of tickets that we put into a sprint to be like what we would call technical debt, things that need to be improved or polished or and so we even have a whole category called just DX, developer experience, as in us, the engineers working on the platform. These are tickets to help improve the DX for us.
No, I was going to say, when you're working on a whole project to like truly like revamp this, you kind of get to erase a lot of that tech debt. And that's got to be a nice feeling too.
Yes. You erase, you wipe out all this tech debt, and then you start building a bunch of new tech debt.
Yeah.
Oh, no. So one of the things that came up, you'd mentioned the word trust earlier, just kind of the role of trust as you're kind of like, hey, let's build this. I'm just kind of curious. I just would love to explore that a little bit more. Just kind of like, was trust a thing that you even like thought should be top of mind for you, but even how that's like evolved as you're building, as you're thinking about teams that have grown and evolved. But I'm just kind of curious about, maybe spending a little time there.
That's an interesting question, because I don't think it's ever like top of mind. I think it's just something that's sort of. So y'all, I've been at Twilio for 8 years, but I've been doing this for a lot longer than that. You can't probably see all my gray hairs, but I guess there's just things that have sort of come naturally and have been attributes of good teams that work really well together. And I just think like you can come up with like working agreements on a team or like we want to do things this way, but it does take time for the team to like observe, oh yeah, we're actually doing that. We're not actually saying that we're going to do this and then not doing it. We're actually doing that. And that does have to come from leadership in that if the team expresses like we want to work this way, then it's on the leadership to make sure that's happening, right? And so like if the team says, hey, we want to make sure we're not leaving tech debt behind and just letting it, you know, collect dust in the backlog, we want to make sure we're paying it down. Then the leaders need to step in. When I say leaders, I'm talking about, you know, maybe people who've been there a little bit longer. You know, I'm in what's called the tech lead role. We have an engineering manager, Dahlia, and then of course Wade is our product manager. So like just the leadership saying, yes, that is, you know, you said it's important, so we agree that it's important, and so we're all going to get together and make sure that happens. And so that's where I say where you have to build that trust is in so that the team can see like, hey, we expressed this concern, we expressed the desire of how we want to change it, and look, it's actually happening.
And how long did you guys think it was going to take to get this launched, and how long did it take, and how accurate was that?
I thought it was going to take like 3 months, and it took a year.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
I think everybody else thought I was crazy, but no, it's funny too, because we, like I said, the first thing we launched on here were the Twilio CLI docs, because they didn't have like all the code samples and API reference and stuff. They were very simple. So it's like we had that like within a couple of months, like starting from scratch, we had a doc site up and running with the Twilio CLI docs. So we're like, yeah, this is going to go fast. And then we start slogging through all the content that needs to be migrated over. Yeah. And a lot of it got really spruced up as it came over. So that's pretty cool. But and then just, you know, answering questions on the fly, like what's the best way to show the code samples? What's the best way to do this? I don't know. We don't have a UX designer yet, so let's just guess and see what people think. And we have a UX designer now. They designed our cool homepage.
Nice.
So that's awesome now. But yeah, it's it did take a while. Because at the same time we were like implementing brand new things, like dealing with the Open API specs, which was a project inside of Twilio. Everybody migrating over to using Open API, and the SendGrid docs had to come from a completely different domain, and so now they're also here on the same platform. So does this also have segment docs with it? It does not. Okay. Segment docs are still on their own site. There's no definitive plan yet, but we'll see.
So David, you thought it would take 3 months. Wade thought it would take 3 years, but then, you know, together 1 year, you guys did it. You guys, you estimated really well.
Crowdsourced the answer.
RJ Pearson had some really good questions I want to get to.
Okay.
First one, how does QA work in some of this, especially with dynamic content?
How does QA work? That's a good question. So we talked about those mini teams. And so like, for the most part, like we were responsible for our own QA. And so the mini teams usually as they coalesce, will be responsible for QAing. You know, one engineer works on a ticket, they're going to work on a different ticket, and then they do code review and QA and testing. One of the things that's part of our pull request template is like, how do you test this? How do you verify that it's working? And so that's sort of like the first layer of QA. The next thing that we did was we worked with the other half of the education team, which is focused on the docs content. And so as we're like deploying brand new things and like the dynamic content with the code samples and things like that, they did a lot of manual QA as well. But then automation is important to us. as well. So, we unit test our code, and so all the small modules we use Storybook and Chromatic. So what that does is what's called visual regression testing. So you create all your stories for all your different components, and then Chromatic runs through and goes, oh, hey, something visually changed. Did you mean to do that, or is it a bug? And you mark it off whether it's a bug or not. And then also we use Datadog. They have this thing called synthetic testing, where it runs through like a script, kind of like a playwright kind of thing, where that runs through a playbook of like, click here, look, make sure this thing is there. And those actually run consistently. They get run in CI/CD against a preview, but they also run against prod, like every 10 minutes or something, to make sure like nothing ephemeral has broken. And then there was one other QOL, yes, with the code samples. So we built a tool that actually creates a mock API server, and then spins up a Docker container for each of the 7-8 languages, and then literally runs the code. So all of the code samples on the Docs site
tested, have
actually been executed, and in the case of things like Java and C#, they've been compiled.
That's cool.
And so yes, Docker revertibles, lots of Docker. There's containers running in containers. It's amazing.
I'm glad. Docker is one of those things that I've been so excited about for so long. I've seen the things people can do with it, and I try to learn it. It's just beyond. I just haven't had enough of a project to do it with. So I maybe on stream we'll have to find a Docker project.
Cool. Find the project first, like we talked about at the beginning of the stream. Yep. Find the project.
Yeah, we had another question.
If you have sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, if you have a Docker project for Alex, let us know. We'll do a Docker project. No, I was thinking earlier. I was like, oh man, we've manually been going through some of our blog posts to be like, does this work? And I'm just like, there's probably a better solution to this of just like, does the code in here work? Right. Yeah, that'll be a thing. So I put Wade on the spot. So Wade was like, yeah, he did. So I had asked Wade, I was like, what about your leadership was so impactful of running this quickly? So one, your experience, your curiosity, and then your bias towards action, and then also leads by example in all the ways and finds a way forward. I love that. I am a very action-oriented person. So I love this aspect of just mixing in all the things, right, to kind of drive things forward, because at the end of the day, that's a priority. But that to me speaks volumes, right? That your impact was able to kind of cut 3 years to one. But I think where a lot of where did you learn these things, right? Do you feel like oh, you were always this person, or were there kind of impactful moments along your career that you're like, okay, something's got to change?
That's a good question. I love it. I think I was always biased towards action. I always wanted to do something rather than think about it, which can get you into trouble sometimes. So I would say over my career, that has been the bigger thing, is finding that good balance between enough planning, planning for the things that could be what we call one-way doors, right? If you make a decision, there might not be an easy way to come back and try it again. So I guess that's the biggest thing, is trying to identify the one-way doors. And if it's a two-way door, then just go for it. If you can come back and try something else, then that's fine. So yeah, and I would say that was, we talked about my career path. And so that year or so I spent as the engineering manager, honestly, for me, was not great. It was not fun. Because I want to be doing things. I want to be hands on keyboard. And yeah, you're just not when you're a manager. And so God bless the people who like being a manager, because oh, thank you so much. Thank you. Because I can't do it. I cannot.
Yeah.
I have to be doing.
That's real. That's actually the weird thing about this job for me, because in other jobs, like if I'm a full-on coder and that's all I'm doing, I can't, that's too much for me.
Yeah.
And I have transitioned into management in other jobs where I was a full-on coder, because it was either you code or you don't. Being an evangelist is kind of that weird in between where it's like, I can code a little bit and I love that.
Yes. Yeah.
I think what I'm hearing from your journey is like, I think sometimes feel like being a manager is the only way that you can show these skill sets. Like when I'm hearing, you know, like you're very team oriented, you're demonstrating leadership, but like, I don't think one has to be a manager to be a great team player. And I think what
Absolutely.
I'm also, you know what I mean? Like what I'm seeing from your experience is like, no, this person is a great team player. But like, you know, like everyone can show up. And I do think it's important for everyone to develop the ability to be a great leader. And I think, I don't know, that as you're talking, like that kind of comes up to me, which is like, what does it mean for everyone to be a great leader despite your title?
Yeah. Leadership and management are not the same thing.
No. And like team lead is a thing that is a leadership role, and management is different.
Right.
Yeah.
There's leadership, and it's a concept. It's a way of working with the team, but management is just a different job. Like there's management, and there's coding, or there's this. But yeah, so this has been my favorite role to date. Being in a tech lead, being able to lead by action, help instill confidence in the team, help share my wisdom with the team, and then of course learn so much from them as well. So I think that's been one of the most important things I try to do, is like not be afraid to show that I don't know the answer, and just saying, hey, person who just started working here 2 weeks ago, I noticed you were working on this thing, you know, how does that work? Like, how did you get that to work? Kind of thing. So yeah.
Yeah, that's such a good way of putting it, like leadership versus management. And a few quick questions. I think the swag might be better for not being a manager, because we get to go out and do stuff. And when you go out and do stuff, they give you better swag. There was one other technical question up above that we kind of didn't get to, which was why did we use Versal over AWS CloudFront and Lambda S3s?
Great question. Less infrastructure to manage, and just a better fit with Next.js. I mean, obviously, they are the creators of Next.js. So I would say the developer experience is just so much nicer. The ability to just in our repo, we can just use the CLI Vercel deploy, and it goes to which project you want it to go to. And it figures out all the things of like, oh, you've got middleware. Okay, we're going to run those as edge functions. And okay, you've got an API route that's going to run as a server function, things like that. So like sort of that, you don't have to have this infrastructure translation layer from your code, your web framework to the infrastructure provider. Like, okay, I'm going to map that to a Lambda function. I'm going to do this with that. We're going to put this in the S3 bucket, which is fine, but it takes away all that. And, I think it's okay. Like we do use a ton of like low level services at Twilio for R&D, because there's an economy of scale that we can build out these things for multiple product teams. But in the case of the documentation, it's like, it's just us over here in developer education. And so we need a platform that is easier to operate. And then
even have like a DevOps team on top of your
exactly. Yeah. We are our own DevOps team. So being able to operate easily, but also not compromising on any sort of performance or quality.
And what's next for like, so you did this whole big migration.
Yes.
Like what's going to keep you busy for the rest of the year? You coast, I mean, like, you know, you're not coasting now. You're coasting
like,
a little bit because it's out there. I can think of things that you can help with for sure, but
we've got a full plate.
Yeah.
One of the things we decided we wanted to do, and this was not necessarily a one-way door, but it's like there's some friction getting back out the other way. And that is right now we have the code for the platform and all the docs, the MDX files, markdown files in the same repo. And we've really decided we would like to have those in separate repos. So that's like one sort of under the hood kind of thing that we're working on.
So in that way, you can kind of split out the stuff people would edit for the docs from the stuff that like is your code.
Exactly. And we've kind of split it out, but like, yeah, we're like putting on requirements. Like it would be nice to just deploy a new set of markdowns and not have to like build the whole platform again too. Like everything's sort of intertwined. So that's what we're working on. The other thing that's happening, not necessarily on our team, but we're gonna jump on it, is SendGrid is gonna get, I don't even know if I'm supposed to say this, but I don't care. SendGrid is supposed to get new SDKs, helper libraries, based on the Open API specs. So all in the past, all the SendGrid helper libraries have been sort of like hand coded, and all of Twilio's helper libraries, the Twilio APIs have been auto generated from the Open API specs. So they're doing that work right now to create the new SDKs, and so then we're going to come along and then create the new code samples using the new version of the SDKs. So yeah, we're also thinking about things like where it would make sense to like version the docs. Like, okay, you're looking at this version of the API, and be able to change different versions where that makes sense, where it would be helpful for the user, not like add additional cognitive load, but if it's necessary to have like being able to go back and look at older versions, look at those. And then I think mostly just we've got sort of just like general buckets of like, what can we how can we improve the authoring process? Like, what are the biggest friction points for authors right now? And then just what do we want the future of the doc site to look like? Like, that's just sort of a open-ended question that we're talking about. So we're probably not going to get to like doing things on that until next year. But so this year is all about like sweeping up after, we just did this huge project in our workshop, right? And now there's sawdust everywhere, and we need to sweep up and put some tools away, and clean things up and make things tidy. I also love that you're not necessarily like jumping onto the next thing, because it gives you time to, like we mentioned before, like you have that those DX tickets. It gives you time to clear out that technical debt while it's still in your head, right? Like if someone were to come back to this a year or two later and try to fix some of the stuff that you guys are doing now, it would be so hard because you wouldn't have the context that you have for it. Right. So that makes a lot of sense. Yes. And that felt like a good preview of what's coming up next. Some updates to the docs there. I see a question from RJ Pearson. Yes, this is referring to the old API Explorer and Tester. Is that something that we've talked about? I think that more interactivity is something we're definitely wanting to explore and figure out how to do. Like we showed you, I showed you like how we auto generate code samples. Like, wouldn't it be cool if you could just fiddle with the parameters and like change the code sample, things like that? I don't know like if that would be useful, but like those are the types of things we want to like explore and see like what would be cool and useful. Like, do folks want to just be able to like run the code sample right there and try it out, things like that? I could see more of that coming, and I know we've like had this a little bit. More stuff like that coming in, like within the console experience, as opposed to within the docs experience, just because there's such a login and do stuff layer. Because I know we already have like the dev phone and things like that built into the console and stuff like that. I personally basically use Postman as my API Explorer, because it's super easy to put stuff in there.
And somebody at Twilio keeps it up to date, I think.
Yeah, and one of the cool things is even though yes, I think somebody does keep that up to date.
Hopefully.
I actually use a different one. It's open source. It's called Bruno. It's super cool. Does everything Postman does without the additional layer of capitalism. And the cool thing is you can just take a curl command. So you copy a curl command on a website like our doc site and just paste it in, and it'll fill all the boxes in the UI with the right things based on that curl command. So, and I know Postman can do the same thing. And
then the other thing that I like is you can take it and export it in different formats. So if I'm doing
they have code generators, right?
You can have a code generate the fetch, and then it's not always perfect, but it's good enough to get me started.
Yeah.
I love how
Bruno.
Bruno even has a thing, Bruno versus Postman. Right. Literally has it outlined. They're like, well, here's how we compare.
So a trick I learned for Googling things is say you wanted to find a Postman alternative. If you Google Postman verse, Google will autofill.
Even in the autocomplete, you get the options.
You get all the alternatives.
Yeah. That's perfect.
It's true.
Yeah, I learned that from somebody who was doing user research hardcore. Cool. What else do you want to talk about? We got a few more minutes here, DPro. Is there anything else you want to share? You've gone so deep. This technical stuff has been awesome. It's been so great to hear your insights on this and leadership. But what else do you want to? Is there anything else you want to share in the last couple minutes here?
I don't know, man. I mean, this has been a blast. Yeah, I would love to hear what folks want to see out of the Docs platform. That's kind of our next thing is just hey, what should we do? How are we gonna, I would say when I first started, and for the first few years when I was in developer education, Twilio was kind of usually mentioned when people would say, what are your favorite docs? And I think we still get mentioned based on our reputation, but I would like to see us reclaim the throne, right? Of the best API reference developer focused documentation. And I hope we're on the way to doing that. So
yeah, I think what's interesting with that is you can get so stuck kind of on the maintenance part of building sometimes where it's you don't really have as much space to be creative, but it's actually, if we are kind of painting a picture, how would you want to be creative? What, if you didn't have to worry about, cleaning up after the, after building, how would you use your paintbrush?
Yeah, I mean, I would want to play with a bunch of different experiments, right? The idea of that, I'd love to have a proof of concept of people having a sandbox to play with the code samples and experiment with them. I don't know. I think I feel like I've just emerged from the cave and I'm what year is it, right?
That's real. That's honest.
So I feel that's kind of where we are on the team is okay, we did all this stuff and now we had this backlog of things we want to finish, and so it's hard to think about what we want to do next, right? So that's actually been challenging. So
no, that's real. I do wonder what does keep you inspired? When you are thinking about when you need to get out of that in the cave, when you need things to pull you more outside of the cave, what are you looking at, right, to keep you inspired? Is it conversations? Is it random tinkering? But I guess I'm curious, what does spark the creativity for you?
It's usually when there's a problem that needs to be solved. So when I see a problem, and for some reason there's a spark of well, how do I solve that problem? And I immediately it can be a curse sometimes, but of course I immediately jump to solutions. How would I fix this problem? How could I do it? So that's what that's where the energy and passion is generated. is when I start thinking about that. And that's what gets me going, is it's like, hey, like I was talking about before, like, I started building like this note-taking system for D&D, and it was like, I had a problem as a game master. I was having trouble keeping organized and having to switch between windows and things like that. I wanted everything in one place, and trying to build that. And that's what was exciting, was just like, hey, I think I know how to solve this problem. So, and then it becomes, I think what keeps that fire going when I see a problem is being able to use something that I haven't used before. Like, I've got a base of knowledge and experience that I feel confident that I could solve this problem, but it's going to require this piece that I've never dealt with before, and I'm super excited to learn it. And so that's usually what the combo, the 1-2 punch, a problem to solve, and then a new piece of tech, a new shiny thing to use to solve it.
No, I like that. We got some suggestions for what we could see. It would be nice if it recommended link to videos, blog posts, and tutorials based on what you're looking at, browsing history. So a little bit of personalization.
Wade, write all this down.
Yeah.
Got some personalization stuff.
That,
I think AI in the docs, I think, is going to be a huge next big thing.
Alex, we made it so far without saying AI, Alex.
No, we didn't. We said it earlier when Craig jumped in. They were wondering if it was Craig or the Craig Llama model.
Okay, so our AI counter was at like 2, and now
it was low. But at some point, it's going to come up, right?
But not, yeah. At some point, it's going to come up.
Yeah, how cool is it going to be if somebody can like basically type in what they're building into AI, and then it can? We kind of have this a little bit. There's already like an Ask the Owl out there where you can get AI help, but then it like comes down and also links to the right docs pages to like help you build those things.
No, that's a good point. Actually, before we get to Roberta Bowles' question, since we're in the AI combo, I guess how are you balancing it out? Because I think everyone's thinking like AI will replace humans rather than like, there are so many other applications that we can leverage these capabilities. But like, what for you are the kind of things top of mind that you're like, okay, this technology can make this process?
So the way I've been looking at AI, at least in terms of what I've been observing in the technology, it sure is fun to play with. But like, to me right now, the benefit of it and where it's best used is when you are already the subject matter expert in what you want it to write about. And so you can have it write something, whether it's code or prose or combination of both, but you need to have the expertise to evaluate it and know that it's right or close or what needs to be tweaked. And so that's where I get a little bit worried about when we start using AI to inform people, like a one-on-one conversation between an AI and then somebody who's not an expert. That I get a little worried because AI can be so confidently incorrect, right? And so that's like any time where I'm putting that kind of scenario, I would want to be very careful with guardrails and make sure that like it's fitting what I would expect, and we're not going to lead somebody down the wrong path because the AI messed up. So kind of where I would look for more like being able to use AI is more of like automating things that the user could have done themselves, but it's so nice that they didn't have to, you know? And I think that's the sweet spot right now. I mean, it's always going to get better, but that's kind of how I'm looking at it.
Yeah. That actually reminds me of something we like did an internal study and found that and this was a little surprising to me, there's more senior developers are actually using AI in their workflows than junior developers. And I think it's exactly what you said, which is like the junior developers don't exactly know. They're not the subject matter experts. They don't know how good the AI is.
Right.
The senior developers know.
Yeah.
And so again, they could more easily do it themselves, like you just said, but then they end up, they don't need to. It's great that they don't need to. So that's a really great way of looking at it. I really, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like it's got to be something that you know, so you know if it's going to be right or not.
Yeah. It's just a task you don't want to have to do. Like,
right.
Yeah. It'd be great if somebody could do it for me.
Yeah, and especially I feel like the more senior you get, you're like, I'm not doing this. I'm just not spending my time here. So we got a really good question from Robertables. And I think
he's coming with the hard hitting questions.
Oh yeah. And I think so I'm gonna also pull it up on screen too. With the recent sunsetting of Twilio Authy Desktop and Twilio Quest, two prominent things that gain much interest, have you found it difficult to get new folks to trust that Twilio features are going to stick around for the long haul, as opposed to creating another Google graveyard? I think that's a wider, and I think that's also just a wider conversation around like developer sentiment, right? And developer trust. So feel free to answer Robertables' question, but also I'm just curious about like, how are you feeling about that topic around like developer sentiment as it relates to Twilio? We've broken a little bit of parts. So over to you.
Yeah, I mean, I still have my Twilio Quest t-shirts. So I almost wore it today. So, but then I'm like, I guess that's not a thing. I didn't want to, oh well.
So you're wearing an owl t-shirt, you are wearing a Twilio shirt.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's our I got this on my first day at Twilio, so it's held up pretty good.
Wow. That's an 8-year-old shirt.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, it's like send the laundry detergent Rex, because that's some good stuff. Okay, back to you.
But yeah, no, I mean, it's a good point, and it's a hard question to answer because there's the whole economic side of things, right? Like it is hard for certain projects to if they're not directly contributing to the bottom line, sometimes it can be hard for them to hang around, especially when you go through a time where like expectations start to shift on companies. No, you need to make money now instead of just growing really fast. You need to make money, and now you need to make money and grow and things like that. So it's tough. So that's just like the honest answer of like, why did we cut some of those things? But I know that wasn't the question. Have we found it difficult to get new folks to trust that Twilio features? I don't know if I'm in the right position to like answer that with a really informed perspective. But it's a possibility that like even me, like looking at products that are coming out in Twilio, that I will look at with a skeptical eye of like, is this gonna make it? Is this gonna work? What I will say though is like, I have noticed a lot more rigor and maturity happening around like where we're gonna put our development efforts and what products we want to like really put forward. And so I would say like in the last 4 years, like we've been building things for the long haul and the long term. So yes, and then for those crazy moonshot things, Twilio Alpha is a thing.
I was a Twilio autopilot user too, and I was sad to see it go.
That's true. So hopefully we're doing a little bit better job of like playing with ideas like over in Twilio Alpha and on Twilio Labs. Yes, thank you, Robert. I am so sad we lost Fax. That was my favorite product that I used twice a year.
Don't get me started. Don't get me started on Fax.
If you wanted to get in touch with your doctor's office, it was the best way.
Yeah. Or a real estate agent that wasn't
Listen. Don't get me started.
So we bring up Twilio Fax.
Don't get me started on Fax.
We have summoned the chef.
I have a Fax. I have a fax machine that was purchased to make a video for fax. I helped contribute to the docs. I don't know. It's one of those products that it's like, I understand why it went away, but I'm allowed to be sad, yeah?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, talk about products. Wait, am I not mistaken that started as a April Fool's joke?
Oh, 100%.
That turned into a real product.
It turned into a real product and was launched on April 1st.
It turned into like a recurring April Fool's. Haha, wouldn't it be funny? Until it was like, haha, wouldn't it be funny if we launched it on April 1st?
Yep.
LOL. No, but I will say, like, okay, while we can't, control the death of Twilio Fax, I do wonder, like, are there ways that we can be better about communicating these things, right? Like, we're sad too, but I don't know that, like, I think folks think like, yeah, we're happy to hear it shut down. Like, I remember being at an event and some guy was like, why did you kill Authy? And I was like, I just, like, I promise, like, I wasn't at the exec meeting,
right. Right.
Like,
yeah.
But I guess I'm wondering from your end, like, we're not necessarily out and about, at conferences or things as much, kind of, given the economic climate, but are there ways that we can do a better job around, like, communicating these things, right, to folks? Like, what are your thoughts in that vein of, like, I don't know, how do we restore the relationship in the midst of so much change?
That's so good. That's so good question. I don't have a formulated answer for this, but just off the top of my head and my gut says, like, we know what Twilio is focusing on. Twilio is a company. Like, we know that, we're focusing on great communication products to enable really good customer experiences. And we're focused on, collecting all of that data, using Segment and getting it into the right places. And so I just kind of feel like if we're following, like, Twilio sets out their goals of, like, what they want to focus on. And I think if we're sort of following what Twilio overall is putting their focus on, then we can offer what we feel is the security and, like, hey, here are the things that'll never change. And that's, you can send an email. I guess maybe SMS is not a good example anymore because of the whole
ATP
stuff. A2P, yes.
You can still send a text message.
You can
just
still
need to be like a legitimate person who needs to send a text message.
It got harder, unfortunately. But but those core APIs, voice, etc., those aren't going to go anywhere. We're only ever going to build on top of them. And like I do say, I think we as Twilio overall has come up with a lot better process for introducing new products. Almost all of our new products build on top of the base of the APIs that we have. And then, introducing them slowly, playing with ideas in places like Twilio Labs and Twilio Alpha. And, so talk about with developers like, hey, this stuff may not stick around, but this is what we're thinking about, give us your ideas and thoughts. But I've also seen a shift, and I've only been at Twilio for 2 years, so I don't know, but like a lot of products we launched in the past were kind of like almost internal products that we exposed. So like Conversations is a great example of that, right? Like, it's how we powered a lot of the SMS stuff that we then exposed, and people can use it or not. And it's useful if you can get your head around it and use it and stuff like that. Or like Twilio Sync's an example of that. Yeah.
What I'm seeing now from the teams, and I can't go too deep into this, but like I am seeing more exciting stuff that our customers are asking for being built by the product teams than I have at any point in the past.
Exactly.
Getting AI into the stack at different places.
Right.
Using more multimodal ways of communicating with people, like the stuff that I think you're going to see coming out of Twilio in the near future feels more customer focused, maybe than the stuff before. And so like, it's changing, but like there's a little bit of that thing where when you pull resources off of these projects like Authy Desktop, which didn't have a ton of users, and you let those people go and work on something new and exciting, hopefully it's a net positive, even though you're losing
Right.
something that you really like. So
Right.
I'm hopeful about the future. And I will just say from the inside, I have seen more enthusiasm and excitement coming from the product teams than I have in this year than I have in the 2 years before that I've been here.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Cool.
Party +1.
Yeah. Sweet. Well, D-Pro, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us. This was like such a cool thing, and you got to dive deep into some of the technical stuff with the people on the stream. And special shout out to everybody who was chatting with us in stream, and some of the Twilions who joined us, like Wade and Dom, and former Twilions like Craig and Tofrog in there, and Chef Brent and RJ Pearson and Robertables asking great questions.
Yeah.
Thank you everybody for being here. This was so much fun. Yeah.
So good. Such a good time. Super
I had a
grateful you
blast.
came to join. Yeah, so happy.
We'll have you back and we'll build something. We'll find.
All right.
Maybe
Yes.
we'll do a Docker project together.
Okay.
Yeah. Cool.
Love
Well,
it. Love it.
Thank you, everybody.
All right.